Point one should, however, should not be too critical, and you should answer the question directly without challenging its assumptions. So you can begin this, or you should begin this, especially in this context, by considering methodological assumptions. So I think the main methodological problem with this, as we've covered in the previous one, is how do we define causality? How do we explain something like economic growth, which, for example, in the Vox article, the historians there mentioned, there's no silver bullet for explaining economic growth. And you have to show that you understand the complexity of answering a question as difficult as this. So this is where your definition of economic growth is really important, because if you're looking at living standards versus a GDP or a combination of both, the sources you're going to use are very different for them. And also in this section, I would answer the first half. So why was economic growth rare before the later 18th century? And you can point out examples where it was rare. Point two should give good, clear answers of how economic growth changed after the 18th century. So you can see now having point one and point two is going to directly tick the question. And yeah, it's going to make it really clear to the examiner that you've answered the question. But point four and point five, sorry, point three and point four, paragraphs 4 and 5 on the PowerPoint here, are the fun sections. This is where you show your flair. This is, your almost like your version of making a speech and everyone applauding because what you've said is really interesting. So point 3 should start to be more critical of the assumptions within the question. So, the European paradigm statement. For you, you might have a completely different answer, or you might agree with the question overall, in which case you should, think about ways of putting your own super unique stance, if you can, within point 4. And point 5 should really hone in on your argument and make it as clear as possible. So for every single one of these things, obviously you need a lot of evidence. You need a point, evidence, and explanation structure, and a link eventually to the question title to make sure it's really clear that you're answering the question all the way throughout. But I think point 3 and point 4 is where you can start to put in your own argument as much as possible. Conclusion should be fairly short and witty if you can. Make some kind of observation that's fairly short. And the best examples of this are going to be in the previous winners that I will look at now. And one very brief point, make sure you cite your sources. You can't put in footnotes, but you can put in endnotes. So these are just numbers. So the footnote shouldn't be on the page, it should be at the end. The citations that you put for each fact should be at the end, not on the bottom of the page. And remember, the bibliography is also very important. So this is a bibliography structure because it goes surname, first name. The article, journal, pages, how you access it, and the access date. I don't want to spend too much time on this because you can find out quite clearly how to do it online, but there are ways and websites of putting in a source and it will tell you how to convert it. And sorry, if you're including primary evidence, primary sources, your bibliography should go primary sources and then secondary sources in that order. And I've put this in bold and I've put a cat here so you remember, cite your sources. If you've looked at a book and you don't reference the book, then for this competition, I don't know what the consequences would be, but if you're doing this as a university student, that's an example of plagiarism.